For all of human history, Earth has been enough. One planet, carrying every life, every idea, every future we've ever imagined. It feels vast, endless, unshakable. But for the first time in our existence, that feeling is beginning to change, not because Earth is failing, but because we are growing. Faster than ever before. More people, more energy, more demand. All are confined to a single world that cannot expand with us. And for a while, that was never a problem, until now. Because every system has limits, and every civilization eventually reaches them. The question is no longer whether Earth can sustain us forever. The question is, what happens when it can't keep up? Because if humanity continues to grow the way it has, then staying on one planet may not be enough. And for the first time in history, survival may depend on something beyond Earth, not as an escape, but as the next step. For most of human history, the idea that Earth might not be enough would have sounded impossible. This planet has always felt vast, almost limitless. Oceans that stretch beyond the horizon. Continents large enough to hold entire civilizations. Skies that never seemed to end. But that sense of infinity was never real. It was a perception created by how small we once were. Because for thousands of years, human population grew slowly. Resources were used locally. The pressure we placed on the planet was small enough that Earth could recover, regenerate, and remain in balance. But that balance has changed. In the early 1800s, the global population reached 1 billion for the first time in history. It took hundreds of thousands of years to get there. Then everything accelerated. In just over 200 years, that number grew to more than 8 billion. Not gradually, but exponentially. And that changes everything. Because growth at that scale doesn't just add pressure, it multiplies it. More people means more food, more water, more land, more energy. And all of it has to come from the same place. One planet. Every year, billions of tons of natural resources are extracted to support modern life. Forests are cleared to create space for agriculture and cities. Freshwater systems are pushed to supply growing populations. Energy demand continues to rise as industries expand, and technology becomes more deeply integrated into everyday life. Individually, these demands can be managed, but together, they begin to push the limits of what Earth can sustainably provide. And the signs are already visible. Climate patterns are shifting, temperatures are rising, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more intense. This is not a single problem, it is a system under pressure. Because Earth operates as a closed environment, there is no external supply of resources, no expansion of land, no way to increase its physical capacity. Everything humanity needs must exist within the boundaries of this one world, and those boundaries do not change, but human demand does. There is a concept known as carrying capacity. The maximum population an environment can sustain indefinitely without degrading. For most of history, humanity existed far below that limit. But today, we are moving closer to it. Not in a sudden or obvious way, but gradually, through increasing strain on the systems that support life. Food production must scale to feed billions more. Water systems must stretch further to supply growing cities. Energy infrastructure must expand faster than ever before. And with each step, the margin for stability becomes smaller. This does not mean Earth is about to collapse. But it does mean something more important. It means Earth cannot scale with us forever. Because no matter how advanced our technology becomes, it cannot change one fundamental truth. Earth is finite. It has a fixed surface area, a limited amount of accessible resources, a climate system that can only absorb so much disruption before it begins to shift. And as humanity continues to grow, that mismatch becomes unavoidable. A civilization designed for expansion, living on a planet that cannot expand with it. So the real question is not whether Earth can support us today. It clearly can. The question is how long that balance can continue. Decades, centuries, longer? No one can say exactly where the limit is. But what we do know is this. Every year, the demand increases. Every year, the pressure builds. And eventually, every system reaches a point where continuing the same way is no longer possible. Not because it fails instantly, but because it can no longer keep up. That is the countdown. Not a clock ticking toward disaster, but a gradual approach toward a limit we cannot ignore forever. Because if humanity continues to grow the way it has, then the future of our civilization cannot remain confined to a single planet. And when that realization fully sets in, the idea of staying on Earth will begin to change. Not as a choice, but as a limitation, one that will eventually force us to look beyond it, towards something larger, towards something without boundaries, towards space. If humanity never moves beyond Earth, then one day, everything we've built will end here. Not because we failed, but because we stayed. Because no matter how advanced we become, one planet cannot hold a civilization forever, so the future points in one direction: outward. Space offers something no planet ever can. Freedom from limits. Not comfort, not safety, but the possibility on a scale that doesn't exist anywhere on Earth. The first advantage is energy. In space, sunlight is constant. No night, no clouds, no interruptions. Solar energy becomes continuous, flowing without pause, at levels far beyond what we can generate on Earth's surface. And that changes everything, because energy is the foundation of civilization. With enough of it, systems can expand, stabilize, and sustain themselves without the same constraints we face on Earth. Then there is space itself, not land, but volume. Instead of competing for surface area, humanity can build outward. Habitats can be constructed, expanded, and duplicated. Entire environments can exist inside engineered systems, designed to support life, independent of any planet. This means growth is no longer tied to geography. It becomes something we create. Resources, too, begin to shift. Beyond Earth, materials exist in vast quantities. Asteroids hold metals and elements that are rare on our planet. Water exists in frozen reserves, ready to be used for life support or fuel. And using these resources does not come at the cost of a living ecosystem. There are no forests to lose, no oceans to damage. For the first time, expansion does not have to compete with life. It can support it. But space does not just offer more for us. It offers relief for Earth. As industry, energy production, and resource extraction begin to move outward, the pressure on our planet can decrease. Less strain on ecosystems, less demand on finite resources. More space for Earth to recover and stabilize. Instead of pushing Earth beyond its limits, space allows us to step beyond them. And then there is survival. A civilization that exists on one planet is always at risk. But a civilization spread across space becomes something else entirely. Resilient, distributed, capable of continuing even if one part is lost. This is what space truly offers. Not an escape from Earth, but a way to protect it. A future where humanity is no longer confined to one world, and where growth does not lead to collapse, but to continuation. There comes a point in every civilization where survival is no longer enough, where simply existing is not the goal anymore. Because once a species understands the scale of what exists beyond its world, it cannot remain confined to it forever. For humanity, that moment is approaching. Slowly, but unmistakably, Earth has been our beginning. It has shaped every stage of our development, our biology, our societies, our limitations. But it was never designed to be the final boundary of human life. And the deeper we understand our own growth, the clearer this becomes. We are no longer a species adapting to Earth. We are a species beginning to outgrow it. The next chapter is not about abandoning Earth. It is about extending life beyond it. Because Earth, as vast as it feels, is still a single environment. And single environments have limits. Space removes that restriction. Not by replacing Earth, but by expanding what home can mean. In the future, humanity will not move into space all at once. It will begin gradually. First through permanent stations orbiting Earth, then through habitats on the Moon, then through settlements on Mars and beyond. Each step will not feel like departure. It will feel like continuation, a natural extension of what came before. And as this expansion grows, something important will change. Earth will no longer be the only place where human life exists. It will become one of many, still important, still foundational, but no longer singular. For the first time, humanity will exist across multiple worlds at once, and that changes everything about what it means to be a civilization. Because a civilization that lives on one planet is always fragile, but a civilization that lives across many becomes something else entirely. It becomes stable in a way Earth alone cannot provide. If one system fails, others continue. If one world faces crisis, others persist. Survival is no longer dependent on a single point. It becomes distributed across space. But the most profound change is not physical. It is psychological. Because as humanity expands outward, Earth itself begins to change meaning. It stops being the place we depend on, and slowly becomes the place we remember. The origin, the starting point, a world that once held everything, but no longer contains everything anymore. Future generations may not experience Earth the way we do. Some may grow up in artificial environments where skies are constructed, gravity is simulated, and ecosystems are engineered. To them, Earth will not feel like home. It will feel like history, a world they study, a world they imagine, a world they are connected to, but not confined by. And then comes the most important shift of all. Human identity itself begins to expand. We stop thinking in terms of one planet. We start thinking in terms of systems, habitats, worlds, and distances between them. We become a species defined not by where we live, but by how far we can reach. But this future is not distant fantasy. It is already beginning. Space stations already exist. Plans for lunar bases are already in motion. Technologies for long-term off-world survival are already being tested. Each step is small, but together they form a direction, and that direction is outward. The next chapter of humanity is not written on Earth alone. It is written across space, across distance, across time. And what we call future is simply the moment when we finally begin to live according to that direction. Because if the first chapter of humanity was learning how to survive on Earth, then the next chapter is learning how to survive beyond it. Not as an escape, but as evolution. Not as leaving Earth behind, but as finally becoming more than one world can contain.